Now, one thing I certainly won't do is go into Beatles history in displaying and explaining this poster, because you, first of all, probably know it as well as me, but you know, it'd have to be a 30 or 60-minute YouTube video, so I will talk just about the poster, and that's all anybody really is here for anyway, not to hear me ramble about great Beatles history and how great all their Hamburg times were and everything. So, from the top of the poster, as I often like to do, you've got Kaiserkeller up there. And did you know that that meant, translated to English is Emperor's Basement? That's right, Kaiserkeller is Emperor's Basement. And then below that, I can't really zoom in too easily here, but I think you can make that out. In the Kaiserkeller, of course, is in red, and then you get into some blue script there. And it does say Tanzpalast der Jugend. Hope my German is decent. Tanzpalast der Jugend means Dance Palace of the Young. Or perhaps shortened, we would just call it Youth Dance Palace. That's what the Kaiserkeller was, because rock and roll was such a teenage phenomenon its first few years. Excuse me. And then naturally you have Hamburg-St. Pauli, St. Pauli being the district of Hamburg in which the Kaiserkeller was located, the real youth-oriented and, you know, fun area, if you will, and troublesome area and all that stuff for youth. And then you've got the obvious Festival der Rock and Roll Fans. That's very easily understood. A little bit of German and English in that sentence. And then you've got Monat, which means, of course, in the months of. I suppose I could point things out, but, you know, over there, Monat in the months of October, November, and December. But what's interesting is the Beatles didn't stick around for December. They were only at the in Hamburg for November and October, and were chased out early before this stand ended for things like George Harrison being too young and everything. Again, now that's getting into Beatles history. And then interestingly, you get into this big red script right across there rather prominently, and it says Präsentiert Bruno Koschmider. And it's kind of funny because it's translated directly, that means presenting Bruno Koschmider, but you know, he was the promoter. So it almost sounds like he had the sign made to say that, hey, presenting, you know, Bruno and the rock and roll bands. But, you know, hey, he was the owner of the Kaiserkeller. He could do anything that he wanted, I suppose, and have the signs made, you know, any way he wanted. So anyway, it does say Präsentiert Bruno Koschmider. And then there you get to it, original big blue script letters, rock and roll bands. And of course, that was the big selling point. You know, rock and roll is an American phenomenon and played by the English language phenomenon, I guess you should say. And, you know, Rory Storm and the Hurricanes and the Beatles were not over there to do originals. Of course, the Beatles practically had none in 1960, right? One after 909 or whatever. But no, it was very much rock and roll cover versions by a couple of English-speaking bands from England. And so rock and roll is the big selling point. And then below that, before rock and roll bands, you've obviously got Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. Now, one question that you might wonder is, why does the poster say his and Hurricane? When in fact, you know, I guess when I first saw this image a long time ago on the white version, the door sign, I thought Hurricane was maybe the German spelling for hurricane, or hurricane, but it's not. No, it's not. It's spelled quite differently in German. So I have sort of a fun little silly theory. As a rock and roll historian, I could float just for the heck of it. But first of all, it was very much Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. In fact, as if it needs proving, here's a 1960 business card for Rory Storm, as you can see, and the Hurricanes. Period. End of story. I mean, what's more official source than their business card? And on the back, it's got some of their awards they've received leading up to 1959. So this is a 1960 business card that clearly says Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. So I have this fun little silly theory, possibly, that it was an homage to American rock and roll, because you had Bill Haley and his Comets, so here they put his, and you had Chuck Berry's song Rock and Roll Music, and you might remember a key line from that song is, man, they were blowing like a hurricane. And Chuck Berry, being the great rock and roll poet, said hurricane just to rhyme it with the previous lyric. You know, everybody knows that he meant they were blowing like a hurricane. So, you know, that's possible. That's just a theory. And thanks for letting me roll with it. Who really knows? We don't know why that was done. So, let's see, we show the business card. And then, of course, obviously below the Hurricanes, you get to the $1 million part of the poster. And that is, get it up here a little bit, make sure you can see it, of course, und the Beatles. And then it says Liverpool-England. Now I remember when I first first saw the poster image, I thought that's so perfect because Liverpool, England, and the Beatles. But we have to remember that applied to both bands because both bands were from Liverpool and England. So both Rory Storm and the Hurricanes and the Beatles. So, but it is really nice to have the Beatles right above the words England and Liverpool. I'm quite a long time collector and studier of Beatles English concert posters, and you just hardly ever see the word Liverpool on any of their concert posters. It was always a section of Liverpool. You'd see things like, New Brighton for the Tower Ballroom or other sections of Liverpool. You didn't have to put Liverpool itself, just like, in a big city like Los Angeles, you wouldn't put Los Angeles, you'd put, Santa Monica or whatever, a part of it. So it's really nice to have Liverpool, England on a Beatles concert poster. Every so often you'd see L apostrophe pool in the transport information, but the actual word Liverpool is just really a really fun part of this poster. I just really think that's really sweet. And, okay. So I mentioned earlier there's 6 Beatles on this concert poster. I'm surely you figured out that, of course, the Beatles were a 5-some at the time with Stu Sutcliffe in there. So you had John, Paul, and George, and Stu Sutcliffe on guitar, and Pete Best, of course, on drums. Well, don't need to tell you that Ringo Starr, of course, was the drummer in Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. So it's not the least bit of a stretch to say there were 6 performing Beatles on this concert poster on any given night. So that's really, really a fun element. I really like that. I only know of one other Beatles concert poster of which there were those 6 performing Beatles. And then that would be this one from 2 or 3 months later from Liverpool. And I call that the Valentine's Night Rock Ball concert poster, or the Casanova Club. And Stu Sutcliffe was still gigging with the Beatles. And so you had 5 Beatles and Ringo in Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. And so that's the only other 6 Beatles concert poster I know of, and that was printed, by the way. That was a printed poster. So now I mentioned before there's the 2 big door signs of this, as well as this conventionally sized poster. I'll call them white and blue. It's kind of convenient. This has a yellow background. I showed you the one with the white background. And the blue one, well, I'll show you a picture of that one too. Where is that rascal? Why not? Sure. Here it is. That's the blue door sign that's, again, very, very large. And all the wording is pretty identical, although interestingly you can see that the artist had so much room he added a dancing couple on there, and up at the top he added a crown, sort of like for Kaiserkeller, the emperor, the Kaiser. So that's what the blue door sign looks like. And they're obviously on a smaller poster like this. There was not room for the German artist, whose name, by the way, was Erwin Ross, who did all this painting. There was not room for him to put graphics like a dancing couple on this smaller poster, but that's okay. You didn't really need that. It sort of detracted. Well, I don't know. Either one, it's good either way, that's for sure. I think any of us would gladly have any of the 3 in our collection if we could possibly make it happen. So I wouldn't want to close out this video about this Beatles 1960s masterpiece without a quick look at the boys themselves from this exact time. And it's one of my favorite, maybe my favorite photo of the early Beatles there in 1960. And as you can see right across there, you've got John, George, Pete, Paul, whoops, I had it out of the frame, Paul and Stu. And this photo was not taken actually at the Kaiserkeller. This was either the Top 10 Club or the Inver Club. I forgot to look that up. But boy, that's exactly how they looked. And this is the concert poster that was posted somewhere, perhaps in the Kaiserkeller, perhaps just around, the St. Pauli district of Hamburg, to draw people in and get money out of their wallets and purses and have them go in and see the rock and roll bands. And for that reason, to me, as a concert poster, it is priceless, because it really is the big bang of the Beatles, and the Beatles were the big bang of... Okay, Pete, come on. Don't get too carried away. We all know the importance that's carried on here. So, boy, I'll tell you, this was so much great fun showing you. I hope you enjoyed seeing it. Thanks a lot for stopping by, and I promise the next 10 things I show you, added together, will not equal this one poster. But still, we'll carry on, because once you've reached the top of Mount Everest, you still want to see other parts of the beautiful world. So, thanks a lot for stopping by, and we'll see you next time, and have a good day. Okay, bye-bye.